2024 is coming to an end, and something that I really love to do at the end of each year is to look back at all the images I've photographed that year and see what direction my photography has taken, revisit all the adventures I've been on, and choose some of my favourite photographs from that year. And a couple of years ago, I created a video where I shared my top 10 images from that year, and it got a really positive response. It seemed like you guys enjoyed listening to me speaking about the images I'd photographed that year, why I liked them, why I photographed them, and it seemed to give you some inspiration for your photography for the year ahead. So I thought I'd do the same this time. I found 10 images from this year that I really like, and I'm going to share them with you in no particular order. It's too hard to rank them 10 to 1 because they all speak to me in different ways, but I thought it would be interesting to share them with you as well as the stories behind them. Halfway through filming this, I thought it would be really beneficial during each image to also share a tip with you. So as well as sharing the images and my thoughts behind them, there'll also be a tip or an idea with each photograph, something that I learned from photographing that image that I'm now sharing with you to help you with your photography. So by the end of this video, you're going to have 10 tips or ideas to take forward into 2025 with you to inspire your photography, and just things you can enjoy. So I hope you find them useful. And what would increase this sharing would be if you were open to sharing in the comments as you're watching this video your thoughts on the images. Not whether you think they're good or bad, because of course photography is all about perception, but what I'd be really interested in hearing is what you see in these images and also what emotions they evoke within you. So please feel free to share that in the comments as you're watching, and let's see if we can start some conversations and a sense of community. So without further ado, let's begin sharing these images with you. And the first one is this photograph here. Now, one thing that's really come to me this year is getting rid of this belief that there's a good time and a bad time of day to do photography. So I've done a lot of photography this year during the daylight hours, especially in the summer months. Now, this image here was photographed in early summer. It was created on a morning that was very overcast, but we'd had a lovely night of rain. So there was all these beautiful rain droplets on the foliage in nature. And I created a number of images this morning, which I absolutely loved. And it was very difficult for me to choose which one to show in this video. But I decided to choose this one here. Now, compositionally, you could argue this isn't the best image because, of course, we've got the rain droplets on the edges of the image that is cut off, and it potentially could be argued that it's not particularly balanced. But what I love about this image is the line of water droplets in the middle, and then how you've got the lines of the leaf going up and down the image. I think the colour here speaks to me the most because this beautiful turquoise colour in this image and the hints of green and the hints of blue, I just think it creates a really lovely image in many respects. And I think for me on this day, this was a day that I really began to understand how beautiful water droplets are to photograph, and it's led me on a journey of photographing many more images of water droplets ever since. But this morning really opened my eyes to this. I got lost in this world of these water droplets, and I created a beautiful video out of it, which I think is my most viewed video that I've created this year. It was just such a magical morning, and as a result I had to choose an image from that to share with you. And it happened to be this one. So And the tip for this image is next year, why not consider photographing water droplets, especially if you enjoy close-up photography or zooming into aspects of nature, because water droplets can just bring your images to life. The next image I'm going to share with you is this one here, which was photographed in the autumn months. This was a beautiful afternoon. We had about an hour and a half until sunset. And the beautiful late afternoon light was streaming through the trees and illuminating the leaves. And it was just lovely. When the sun came out and backlit these leaves, I was just like mesmerised by the beauty. I just got so drawn into the colour of these leaves and how this beautiful sunlight was really illuminating it. I just felt so drawn to it, and I had great fun photographing the images that day. Yet again, I photographed a number of photographs I could have chosen to share with you, but I decided to share this one because I really feel that that leaf at the end and how it's illuminated really shows the vibrancy of this day. And I love how the background is blurred out, and we can also see a tree in the background here with the trunk on the left-hand side, showing that I'm in a woodland. And I think that combination of the dark black background combined with this illumination of the leaf really shows what interested me that afternoon in terms of the bright sunlight. So tip number 2 is if you're photographing a subject that's a little bit transparent or translucent in some way, like a leaf, using backlighting from the sun can create some beautiful images and illuminate it really, really well. So next year, why not play around with backlighting your images, and especially if you're photographing leaves, give it a go and see what sort of beautiful images you can create. The next image is this one here, which was only photographed a couple of weeks ago, and once again, so many images were created this day, so many that I could probably create a little portfolio book or even an exhibition out of these photographs. There was so many that mesmerised me. But this one I've chosen specifically because it reminds me of a galaxy. This image comes from about 5 or 6 images which are quite similar in nature. But what I loved about this little collection of images was how I felt like I was transported into space. This image was photographed at my local river estuary. I was at the end of a pier. The sun had just risen. We had this beautiful movement in the water. It was quite a calm day, so just little ripples going around the water. And that combination of the rippling water with the low early morning sunlight, as well as these pieces of froth floating down the river, just allowed for this combination to create beautiful image opportunities. And here, the tiny specks of white in the water remind me of stars, and then the blacker areas remind me of like black holes in space, and then the floating foam that we've got in the image here could either be spaceships or planets or moons, whatever your imagination stirs up for you. But I think what this really brought to my attention was how photographing water can really evoke our imagination and transport us into a completely different world. And I think this kind of imagery is something that I'd like to explore a little bit more moving forwards, because combining the movement of the water with light and photographing that at different times of day can just lead to some amazing images. And I think this image, as well as the other images created that day, really showcases that. So tip number 3, get yourself a telephoto lens. Get near water, if you can, on a jetty or a pier, so you're safely surrounded by the water, and zoom into that water and photograph it to create these beautiful abstract images. You can come away with some beautiful photographs, and it's always exciting to see what images you do create. The next image is this one here, which was also photographed only a few weeks ago. And while there's quite a lot going on here in terms of really bright areas that have been caused by water droplets, as well as quite a lot of crossing branches in the background, I just love the colour in this image. I love the combination of the blue sky in the background, which is all blurred out, with the vibrant orange leaves. And this leaf in the foreground that's in focus, I just love the colour of it, and also that darkness of the branches and the lines within the leaf, and how as the leaf curves over, you've got the light illuminated areas and the darker, more bronze areas. And I also think it's interesting because some needles from a nearby tree have blown off the tree and fallen onto the leaf here. So you've got the 3 leaves and these 2 needles surrounded by all this beautiful colour. And it just speaks to me really quite deeply. And the tip or the message from this image here is, even if you only have half an hour spare, head out with your camera and see what you can find, because this image and all the other images created that day were photographed with very minimal free time, and yet I came away with a beautiful collection of images that I'm really, really happy with. And it just shows that just heading out there, no matter how much time you have available, just heading out there and getting engaged with photography can lead to some really beautiful images. Now, a couple of times a year I host an event called an Immersive Photography Weekend, which is a weekend-long mini retreat up here in the northeast of Scotland where we do mindful photography. And it's hosted at a lovely venue called Marcassie Farm, where there's a pond, there's trees, there's farmlands, and every month, as the seasons unfold, there's different photographic opportunities. And this image here was photographed on my March Immersive Photography Weekend when we had the daffodils growing. And you can see here in the background, the vibrant yellow is from some of the daffodils in the background. And then these two leaves, I guess, growing here are also part of the daffodils. These are parts of them that haven't yet fully grown. And I just love this image because it is colourful and vibrant, there's contrast in it, but there's also a beautiful abstract nature to it. To me, this looks like it could have been created with pastels, and I really like that pastel-y effect that's been created here. And when I was editing this image, I saw two characters. I saw this character on the left, which to me looks like they're stunned. They're a little bit like shocked or dissociated. And then you've got this character on the right looking at this character on the left a little bit concerned. And I spoke a little bit in a video earlier in the year about how I used to get dissociated quite a lot when I was younger, and it's still something that I deal with now and again. If I get triggered in life and get particularly anxious, I can just get a bit overwhelmed and kind of zone out. It's a coping strategy that I've developed over the years, which I'm slowly working through, but it still comes up now and again. And I think this is why this image speaks to me so much, because this reminds me of dissociation. You're standing there, there's so much going on around you, you can't quite take it in, and just how the lines, the colours and the patterns of this image are the way they are. It just, to me, it speaks of dissociation, and therefore it has quite a personal feel to it emotionally. And the tip for this, I think, is to take the time to lie on the ground and see what you can find. And don't always photograph the main subject. So what I mean by this is these were daffodils, and what I would have done earlier on in my photography journey was photograph the daffodils. And I would have not even considered photographing the stems or the petals of the flower. But what this image depicts is often sometimes not photographing the main part of something and photographing other aspects of it. You can come away with some really beautiful abstract imagery and find opportunities and aspects of that subject that you may never have considered was possible. The next image is this one here, which was photographed during a video I made in the summer about bringing touch into your photography, and how when you're dealing with textures and patterns, being able to touch your subject, if it's safe to do so, can really enhance your connection and lead to more photography opportunities. And this image, to me, I love it, because I went to the coast, I was greeted with this beautiful rocky shore, and by touching the barnacles on this rock, I began to look at them more deeply and see the beautiful textures and patterns within them, and also see these beautiful beak-like mouths to these barnacles. It absolutely fascinated me, and I got drawn into this world, which again, this reminds me a little bit of something sci-fi or alien-like. These prehistoric creatures I feel when I look at this image. And also potentially little birds in a nest with their beaks, the little chicks waiting for their mum to come and feed them. Again, this is a good depiction of how an image like this can allow our imagination to run wild. And the tip for this image is when you're out in nature, if it's safe to do so, why not touch your subjects and see if that can bring you closer to them, to notice more and lead to some really interesting images. Because touch for me is something that I've began to incorporate more and more into my photographic practice. It deepens that mindfulness aspect, but it also, as I say, allows you to see more, which really can lead to more connection and photographic opportunities. The next image is this one here, which was photographed right at the beginning of the year. And this is little snow flakes. And I'd never thought about photographing snowflakes before. At the time, I was doing a mentorship program, and one of my clients had been out in her garden photographing snowflakes, and her images were beautiful. And the next time it snowed here, after being inspired by her, I went out during a snow shower and photographed these fresh snowflakes that had landed on top of a metal fence in one of my local graveyards. And I love this image because it reminded me that there is new things happening in nature all the time. And when we're out in something like a snow shower, with all these little snowflakes falling from the sky, it's creating new opportunities all the time. And we often look at snow as a whole, this blanket of snow covering the landscape. But actually looking at the tiny little flakes that snow is made up of can lead to some beautiful images. And I love here with the man-made top of this fence post with the beautiful snow covering on it. And I really love the blue colour in this image. It just draws me in. So the tip to share with this image is to get curious about what something is made up of. Rather than looking at something as a whole, like a blanket of snow, consider all that tiny little bits that it's made up of. And suddenly you've gone from one photographic subject to millions of photographic subjects, which may be quite overwhelming to some people. But if you're struggling to find image opportunities, breaking it down into all these small little aspects around you can just open up your mind and your eye to so many different opportunities, which is exciting. And you'll never run out of things to photograph when you do this. The next image is this photograph here. Now I'm aware there's a little bit of a smudge in the bottom right-hand corner. I tried to edit that out without much luck, but to be honest, I don't feel it distracts too much from the image because we've got this murky, misty feel in the water here. And I absolutely love this photograph. This was also photographed early in the year, and I was just at my local pond. I was out for a walk and I noticed these leaves, which of course had fallen in the autumn, and we were now coming towards the end of winter, and they were this beautiful bronzy colour as they'd obviously decayed quite a bit over the last few months, and they were just floating on the water. It was such a still winter's day. The water was flat calm. You can see some of the clouds here reflected in the water, which is what's creating that misty effect. But this combination of the dark blue water with these beautiful bronze leaves, I just absolutely loved it. And I've gone on to photograph quite a few leaves floating on water this year as well. And I love that combination of these two colours. But the tip for this image is to spend some time admiring water. And if you notice something floating on the water, see if you can incorporate that into your images and create these beautiful little worlds within photographs. It can just be a beautiful thing to do. And I don't know, I find having water in my images just adds something. And hopefully this image will stir that sort of feeling for you too. Now this image here, still to this day, blows my mind. I went out, it must have been February, early March this year, and photographed the snow droplets in one of my local woodlands. And I found the snow droplets in this part of the woodland that was still partially frozen. So a lot of the water droplets were also partially frozen. And it was beautiful because these were created early afternoon. This image here, having the snowdrops with the droplets of water, it really added something different to the image. And this photograph here speaks to me so much because I see a person in this snowdrop. We've got the two eyes here, and there's almost like the feeling of arms going down the side of the snowdrop. And then this blurred out stem or petal in the foreground with this other water droplet on it also looks like an eye. So to me, it looks like two people who are very different. One's a stem, one's a flower, but looking at each other in the eye. And this image to me symbolised connection. And I just was like seeing this personification of being human, I guess, in these flowers, which I thought was really beautiful. So the tip I'd like to share with this is see if you can find aspects of yourself, aspects of humanity within nature, and then see if you can create images out of it. Now this photograph here, I didn't realise that there was two eyes and this sort of feeling when I was actually in the field. I noticed it when I was back in the editing the images. This is one thing I've noticed many times this year in my photography, is I've found these aspects of myself and of humanity in my images, which has added a much deeper meaning and connection to me from the photographs. So if you see two eyes in your images or some sort of human element, consider, again, allowing your imagination to run wild and just ponder what these images are reflecting back to you. And like I say, to me, this is reflecting this sense of being seen, looking at another in the eye and feeling that deep connection. And the final image, and I said I didn't have a particular favourite or order for these images, but this is arguably my favourite image of the year, potentially. It's so hard to pick a favourite image. It's like, I just love this image so much. This was also photographed on one of my immersive photography weekends. I think this was also March's one. It may have been April's. Yeah, it was either March's or April's one. And this here is blossom beginning to grow on the trees. And I just love this image because by using my macro lens, I was able to isolate these two blossom flowers here. I love how they're coming together, how the ends of the stamen? Gosh, I'm testing my biology skills here. Where the pollen is are coming together and touching very lightly. I love this vibrant pink in the middle of these flowers, and I love the almost purity of the white surrounding it as well. I remember at the time of photographing this, I posted it on Instagram, and I called this image Electric Attraction. And that's what it symbolises to me. It's like these two flowers that meet and they feel this instant attraction for each other. And just how you've got the wispiness in the background and how they're coming together like this. And there's, of course, some yellow in the image as well. Yeah, it just speaks to me of like electric attraction, when you just feel that attraction for something or someone, and they're coming together and they're almost beginning to explore this. And then there's a sense here of love as well with the pink. There's something so beautiful about this that drew me in. And this image, like I say, just speaks to me on such a deep level. And I think the final tip that I'll share with this image is to photograph things that you wouldn't normally photograph sometimes, and see what images you can create. Because sometimes when we photograph things that we don't normally photograph, it can shift our mindset, but we can also discover images which we would never have necessarily thought of photographing before. And if this is anything to go by, maybe create an image that becomes our favourite image of the year, but yet it's of something that we never thought we'd be interested in photographing. So that's the end of that. That's my top 10 images of 2024. I hope you found me sharing these as well as my thoughts behind them interesting, and it will give you some tips and ideas for the year ahead. As I said, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Which images spoke to you and why? Did any emotions get felt when you were looking at these? And just any general thoughts as well. It would be lovely to hear them. So yeah, this may be my last video of 2024, or there may be one more. I've not quite decided yet. So of course it's the festive period, so I think it's always quite nice to take a little bit of a break at this time of year. But regardless, this will be one of the last videos, if not the last video of 2024. So I just want to say a huge thank you for all of your support this year, for taking the time to watch my videos, for interacting with me, and for those of you who have personally connected with me through my events, immersive photography weekends, my Monday sessions, which are still running over the winter, called Mindful Mondays. If you want to come along, you're more than welcome. Those that have done any courses or mentoring or anything with me this year, it's been a real pleasure to connect with you, and I really appreciate you coming along on the journey. And of course, next year there's other exciting stuff happening. There's the coastal retreat in April. I think there's one space left on that, if it's not been filled by the time this video goes out. I'll also be announcing dates for next year's immersive photography weekends at the beginning of January, and there'll be some online stuff as well, like the Learning to See course and Mindful Mondays. So If you don't want to miss any of that announcements, you can sign up to my email newsletter. And I think all that's left to say is thank you so much for this year. Oh, and something that I did this year, of course, was write my first book, From Shooting to Creating, How Changing Your Language Can Transform Your Photography. I guess you could say it's a bit of a philosophical book, but there's also quite a lot of practical advice in this, and exercises to go along with exploration of the words that you may find of interest. And something that I'm really keen to do next year is to create my first zine or photo book. It's been on my mind for months now, and I've started to pull together some images. So when the time is right, that is something that may be coming in the not too distant future too. I think it's time. I've been doing photography now for 15, almost 16 years, and I've not created a photo book or zine yet. So I think it's long overdue. But anyway, enough of me speaking about my plans for next year. Again, I just want to say thank you so much for watching and for your support this year. I wish you all the best for 2025. May it be a really beautiful and creative year for you. And I look forward to sharing more photographic adventures with you soon.